Okay, let's be honest. Of all the main 3 Zoids shows, Fuzors is probably the worst of all of them, and I'm not going to dispute that. However, I feel that even though many people disliked Zoids Fuzors, it's gotten a bit more flack than it really deserves. I'm not gonna lie, I've always been a huge Zoids fan, and I will wank these anime off with the force of 1,000 hands until the day I die, but I'd like to put the idea out there that maybe Fuzors wasn't quite as terrible as people make it out to be. When it comes down to it, I'm very good at seeing the good in things, no matter how awful or cheesy it may be. I mean, hell, the entirety of Zoids is supposed to be a kids show. Well, I say supposed to be because, well... Basically, I'm always very appreciative of the good stuff, no matter how few or far between it is, and I'd like to share some of my thoughts on Fuzors to maybe get you to see it in a different light. Am I asking you to like it? Hell no, but I at least hope that I can change the mindset you have when you watch a new show. Make you go and acting like this instead of this. That way you'll probably find yourself enjoying things more. Anyways, I've rambled enough, and we are here to talk about Zoids, so let's just rip off the band-aid right now and talk about... It's complete dog shit. If I had to pin the blame for the hate this show gets on one thing, it would have to be the animation. Zoids is a show that takes huge pride in its visuals. This show had better 3D CGI in 2001 than most anime have today. I still firmly believe that New Century is the single best animated show ever made, with only a few clips I'd ever call subpar. The way it was able to achieve this was by giving the 3D models a very simplistic color palette and harsh outlines, so that it can blend in with the 2D hand-drawn animation. This allows the 3D animated Zoids to fit in seamlessly with the explosions, bullets, and environments that were all drawn by hand. Zoids Fuzors looks like it was made in fucking 3D Movie Maker. But the thing is, this show could have looked incredible, and we can even see that in some of the shots. You see this? That is fucking cool. I look at shots like this and think, you know, maybe it isn't that bad after all. And then the Zero Falcon starts running on air. Speaking of Zero Falcon, it's time to talk with my biggest gripe with the animation. Transformation sequences. In New Century, you'd have to watch the Liga Zero CAS sequence maybe a few times for each armor type before the show just said, you know what, let's just skip this and get back into the action. In Fuzors, every time RD puts up his hand, you will have to sit through the same transformation sequence again, and again, and again, every single episode. Oh, and not only that, if Blake wants to do some fusing, guess what? You gotta watch another transformation sequence for that. Oh, filler characters that show up for literally one episode? That's another transformation sequence you gotta watch. It gets old so fast. However, I do actually have a bit of praise to give for the animation as well. Not so much for the Zoids, but for the characters and the setting. Now, this is where I'm gonna get a bit controversial. Zoids Fuzors has my favourite character designs of all the series. If any of you are watching this video, chances are you might have also seen Visaic's video on why Zoids Fuzors flopped. If you haven't, I highly recommend it because it's very insightful, but I have to disagree on one thing in particular. I found all these characters to be very memorable, and by far have my favourite outfits. Of course you have RD, who's always looking slick in his blue jacket and his wonderful red eyes. Amy is like the Fuzors version of Naomi, except they didn't make her half of the age that she looks like. Blake is always looking dappy, he's got his Yeezys and his fresh Supreme jacket. Hell of a lot better than sticking fucking toilet plungers on your head, Jack Sisko. There's one thing I do like about the CGI though. It's the expressiveness of the Zoids. Although I think the personifications of the Zoids themselves were definitely better in New Century, Fuzors kept up with it surprisingly well. One part that sticks out to me that still genuinely gives me chills is... Spoiler alert! When Alpha Richter, after banning Z-Fighters from, well, existing, puts all of the Zoids in front of a fucking firing squad and guns them down. Look at this shit! You can genuinely see these things carrying for their life! Kids show my ass, dude! Speaking of Zoids though, how about we move on to our next topic? Even if the fights weren't that well animated, I have to say, this show had my favourite Zoids in the whole series. Ask literally anyone who's seen this show and they will tell you that the Gairiki Fury is the coolest shit ever, but that's not even the half of it. The Energy Liger is to the Liger Zero what the Guy Ricky is to the Berserk Fury, and it is the coolest iteration of the Liger ever shown on screen. But not only that, there's also another cool Liger, the Zero Phoenix. Then you've got the Chimera Dragon, Laser Storm, Scissor Storm, the Matrix Dragon, the goddamn Seismosaurus, Leo Blaze, Bold Guard. Okay, no, Bold Guard fucking sucks. But seriously, some of the Zoids introduced in the show are just fantastic. Even though the junior Zoids tend to be kinda shit since they're designed to be accessories to a larger one, Dispolo and Evo Flyer are still badass as hell. Now, I've been singing the new Zoids a lot of praises right now, but unfortunately, Fuzors also introduces my single least favourite Zoid in the entire series. I fucking hate Zero Falcon. One of the coolest things about Liger Zero is how it's a blank canvas. That's why it's called the Liger Zero, and white like a blank sheet of paper. The cool part is that it can change into all these other forms for different advantages, but never without drawbacks. Zero Jaeger is incredibly fast but hard to turn. Zero Schneider has incredible close-range power but lacks any form of range. Zero Panzer has absurd firepower but can't move at all. Zero Phoenix can fly and is incredibly maneuverable, but it has very little firepower. Zero Falcon is literally Zoid Jesus, and I'm not even joking. It is faster than every other Zoid in the show, its Strike Laser Claw is a one-hit kill, its cannons on its back are equal in power to a fucking charged particle gun, it can fly, and it is strong enough to hold up an entire Whale King by itself, but above all else, it just looks really stupid. Why the hell does it have so many colours? It looks like it's made out of Lego, for Christ's sakes. At least with Zero Phoenix, flight was like its gimmick, but Zero Falcon is literally unstoppable. One of the coolest things about the Liger Zero is how agile and maneuverable it is, seeing it dart around wicked fast on the ground, but Zero Falcon just says, yo, fuck that, I'ma walk on air. So, here's how I'd fix it. Make its colour scheme white and yellow, no more flight, keep the guns but tone the power down a bit, and make them more like the Berserk Fury's drill blades. Other than that, the Zoids are pretty damn cool. So next, let's take a look at... I really like them. RD is actually my favourite protagonist of all the three original shows. He's by far the most relatable of all the main protagonists from the series, and not only that, his age actually makes sense. I also think he has some of the best jokes in the series.
I'm gonna introduce you to Blue City's hottest Z-Fighter, Rockstorm's OG!
I hate this.
As a matter of fact, I think the characters are a lot better than what people give them credit for. Most likely because people are already going into the show with a negative mindset that ultimately hampers their enjoyment, but anyways, I'd like to share some of my personal favourite characters. In the main cast, other than RD, one of my favourites definitely has to be Sweet. The whole dynamic between her and RD being childhood friends and her always looking out for him in a motherly manner is very, well, sweet. Despite how she never really fights, seeing her on screen always makes me feel good inside. Where she and RD really shine as characters though to me is... spoiler alert! The arc where Fire Phoenix dies. RD appears to be perfectly fine, but his dialogue comes across as very cheesy. But as it turns out, that's actually intentional, because he's actually depressed as shit because his partner got murdered in front of his very eyes, so he's faking so that his team won't worry about him. The only one to really pick up on this is Sweet, because she's known RD the longest. The parts that really stick with me the most is when Sweet is sitting outside the bathroom knowing that RD is inside, and then it cuts to RD crying in the shower while punching a wall. There's also the part where Sweet tucks RD into bed when he refuses to come out and talk with the rest of the team, and then there's that part on the roof where she's trying to cheer him up. Oh, and don't even get me started on RD remembering Sweet's birthday, that was the cutest shit ever. Actually, speaking of that episode, I'd also like to point out how much I love Tracy. She is this eccentric, demanding, hyperactive bitch, and I love her. She's got a huge crush on RD, but doesn't remotely give a shit about anyone else. You can see her arguing with her staff after a show gets cancelled about how she's supposed to be the cute icon of the channel that everyone looks up to, and everyone's trying to explain to her that they can't do anything about the show getting cancelled. And then there's also a scene where she punches a cop in the face? What? Then we've got Team Savage Hammer. Honestly, as far as things go, Blake isn't anywhere near as good of an anti-hero as Raven was, but I do still like him as a character. Unlike Raven, there are never any points where I think he feels too edgy, and he's got some of my favourite voice acting in the show.
I said don't move, but then you took off anyway. And now you're going to suffer!
The only part where he really falls flat is that there was so much potential for his backstory to be elaborated on. I would have loved to see an episode where Sandra, another one of my favourites by the way, tricks Blake into joining her after he loses against RD, but we kinda just got like a 10-second flashback and that was it. I would have gladly sacrificed that episode about that stupid ass escort mission for this, but let's not forget the most important part. Blake and Luke are the first ever canon gay couple in the entirety of Zoids. No, I'm not bullshitting you, it says it right here. Fuck you, it's 100% real, leave me alone, it's cute, okay? Then we've got the Peacekeeping Bureau. Oh my god, I love these guys. They're all so memorable, dude. First you've got Gummy, who's literally a space cowboy with a fucking Gojirless Giga and never ceases to be entertaining. Then of course we've got Chow, who is the cutest little thing on Planet Z and is objectively the best waifu from Fuzors, and I will not be accepting any arguments, shut up! And then we've got Deed, who is a complete badass and holy shit, I would literally lie on the floor and be this guy's carpet. He's also, you know, an actual person of colour, instead of just being like 2 micro shades darker than everyone else in the show. I'd also like to take this time to mention Venus. For those of you who don't know, spoilers, Venus is Fire Phoenix. Or more specifically, she's the human personification of Fire Phoenix after she dies. I don't know why more people don't talk about this, because this is easily one of the most interesting concepts I've seen in the show. A forest where dead Zoids of the past can come back to talk to their pilots in person. Like, isn't that such a cool concept? Because of this one episode, Venus automatically became one of my favourite Zoids characters, but in my opinion, none of these characters can hold a candle to my top 3. Were it not for Fiona and Raven, these 3 would be my favourite characters in the entire Zoid series hands down. These guys are the funniest shit in the whole show. For those who don't know, these guys, Vareth, Dart and Saber, come into the show at about the halfway point and are complete foreigners. None of these guys have ever touched a piece of modern technology outside of a Zoid, and it gives them the most hilarious interactions in the show. Dart is completely incapable of using doors and instead slashes them to pieces with a sword, and when he develops a crush on Sweet, he picks one of her own flowers and gives it to her. When Vareth's team goes to challenge Blake to a Zoid battle, instead of, you know, sending him like a GPS location or a text message like you'd expect them to, they give him a goddamn map and a handwritten battle challenge. Saber has no idea what a traffic light is, so she asks Vareth about what it could possibly be, and he replies,
I think it's called a Christmas tree.
And then it pans out to these 3 standing in the middle of the road with cars piled up everywhere because these guys don't even know what a road is. Hell, even their Zoids are weird. I know I didn't mention this in the Zoid section, but like, seriously, look at this. Oh, you have a command wolf? That's cute. Vareth has a command wolf on a motorbike with spike wheels. Hey Jack, that's a pretty cute lightning sight you got there, but I don't know, can it, fight with a sword and teleport? No, I didn't think so. Hey, nice Genosaur, nerd. Guess what? Saber has a fucking Geno chicken. A Geno chicken! Everything about these guys is just pure gold, and the best part is, they stick around. They aren't just some random disposable filler characters that only show up for 1 episode. Now, since I've talked for about 4 hours about the characters, I think maybe we should now move on to the most important part. Zoids has always had incredible music, and Fuzors is no exception. Chaotic Century and Guardian Force gave us some incredible orchestral pieces, along with some rock and roll and a bit of classic 90s electronic stuff as well. New Century was a lot more light-hearted, so it had more upbeat rockatronic tracks composed by Otani Ko. He's a bit of an underground composer. He's only done a few small-scale soundtracks such as, Godzilla, Gundam Wing, goddamn Shadow of the Colossus. But Fuzors has a much more different approach. It still keeps some of the rock and roll stuff in there because, the whole series takes place in Space America, but it mainly consists of urban hip-hop, which works with the setting perfectly. I'd argue that of all the Zoids shows, Fuzors has my favourite setting of all of them, and not only that, it also has the best soundtrack that fits with it. It's not just the urban style that makes it great either, it still manages to pull off great orchestral pieces from time to time, such as Tears for the emotional stuff, and, well, this one is just fucking terrifying. That theme you heard in the edit at the beginning is just simply called Battle, and it's actually my favourite track from all of Zoids. Overall, incredible work on the soundtrack as always, but now for the actual most important part. It's pretty freaking good, man. Stories aren't necessarily something you can compare between series because each one has a different direction in mind. The plot is interesting though, and it has a lot of twists and turns in it. For instance, mega spoiler alert. One of my favourite parts of the story is when Gummy's Gojulus goes berserk and rampages through the city, and we don't know what went wrong. Because he couldn't control the Zoid, he and his two closest allies are demoted to the bottom of the chain of command and are replaced with autonomous drones. Then it turns out the one who sabotaged the Zoid was Helmet from Mark Storm, who gets taken prisoner, but psych, it turns out that it was Alpha Richter's handiwork so he could replace the head of the PKB with his own man, who just so happens to be Helmet's worst enemy, so he won't ever let him out. Then you find out that all the autonomous Zoids that are replacing the regular PKB Zoids are also made by Alpha, and everything gets so crazy, I love it. However, there are two complaints I have about the story. First is that although the show's plot itself is very strong, the backstories of the characters are never really explored, ever, and it's a lot of wasted potential, honestly. There's some really interesting stuff hinted at regarding RD's father leaving him, his mother, his relationship with Sweet since they were kids, but none of it is ever explored. But I think no one gets slapped in the face harder than this than Blake. I always thought he was an interesting character, and I always wanted to learn why he was the way he was. You know what we got? For 30 seconds at the start of one episode, they were all like, oh yeah, Blake fought RD and lost because he was sabotaged by Sandra so we would join her team. And that's it. That's all we got. Not only that, but there was a mistake in the dialogue where he called his Genosaur the guy Ricky. Come on, man. Give us some meat. Show us how gritty RD and Blake's rivalry was. At least give us a whole episode or something about the character's childhood or something, man. It could have been awesome. Don't lie, I know you all cried when you learned about Raven's backstory, you sappy pieces of shit. Why couldn't we get that again? The second complaint I have about the story is, well, nothing happens until episode 13. I love the plot of the show, but literally the entire first half of the show, from episode 5 through 13, is filler garbage. It's like those weird episodes in the middle of Guardian Force with that one Cerberus one, that really shitty Irvine romance one, just a whole lot of garbage that has no meaning to the story. It's not like New Century, which was almost exclusively filler up until the Royal Cup, but it made it entertaining by always adding a new twist, maybe a new Zoid or two, and having a bunch of funny character moments to keep your attention in addition to actually having a goddamn animation budget. And not only that, New Century was more so a slice-of-life/sports anime than it was an actual, adventure or story. Fuzors tried to be a sort of balance of Guardian Force and New Century, but unfortunately that just ended up in throwing random episodic trash that was boring to watch. The only reason to watch the first half of the show is to learn who all the characters are and to find those few good jokes hidden in there. Fuzors may have its little quirks, but I'd like to finish off with one final statement. We all love Zoids Genesis, right? So I think that if we can forgive shit like this, and and this, so we can appreciate a good story, I think maybe we can afford to loosen up on Fuzors a little bit. It's not a very long show, it's only 26-ish episodes, so if you find any of the points I mentioned in this video to be interesting, I strongly recommend that you re-watch it with a bit of a different mindset. Who knows, you might even find yourself enjoying it.